Hello, everyone. How are you? My name is Wendy Myers. I am your host for the Live to 110 podcast. So only tune in today if you want to live a really long time, disease and medication free. That's my goal, is to help to educate you about how to do just that. And that's my goal. I'm 44 and, I do a lot of things. I go to great lengths to take care of myself and take pride in my health. And I want to inspire you to do the same. Today, we have a very special guest. His name is Massey. I just love him so much. I just think he is such a boy genius. And we're going to be talking about bioenergetics and how this is a very cutting edge, not so new, but very, very cutting edge way to improve your health in ways that you never thought possible. On today's show, Harry is going to be talking about how our body's energetic field dramatically impacts our body's physical health and also our ability to produce energy. It's very, very interesting conversation. We'll also be talking about infoceuticals, what those are exactly, and how they improve your body's ability to produce energy. And we'll be talking about things that disrupt your body's energetic field, like EMFs, electromagnetic fields. These are, the things that cell phones emit, and computers and cell phone towers and wireless internet and all this stuff that we are surrounded by every day. And a lot of research showing is dramatic impact negatively on our health. And it's something we really need to be paying attention to. More podcasts on that coming up soon. But before we get into all that, we have to do the disclaimer. Please keep in mind that this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or health condition and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. The Live to 110 podcast is solely informational in nature, so please consult your healthcare practitioner before engaging in anything we suggest today on the show. And I have a new book coming out on Amazon. It's available right now for pre-order. It's called Limitless Energy: How to Detox Toxic Metals to End Exhaustion and Chronic Fatigue. And that's what this podcast is about. And that's what Harry's big message is. How do we get more energy? How do we increase energy in our bodies? And it's not by taking stimulants. It's about reducing toxins. It's about getting into the sun. It is about doing so many different things naturally to improve energy production in the body and remove the blockages to energy production. And toxic metals are one of those blockages interfering in your mitochondria's ability to produce ATP, which is your energy, your body uses for energy. So go check it out at Amazon.com, Limitless Energy, #Limitless Energy. Today's guest, Harry Massey, his story is incredible. It's very inspirational for anyone dealing with long-term severe illness or overcoming other kinds of seriously challenging circumstances. Just briefly, Harry was sick with serious chronic fatigue syndrome all through his 20s. 4 of those years he was bedridden, 6 years completely housebound. Harry, being the extremely determined person he is, tried many different things in his recovery, including nutrition, naturopathy, fasting, Gerson therapy, and other biochemical approaches that you can think of. He eventually fully recovered after discovering energy medicine and studying quantum biology. After 10 years of illness, this is what Harry went on to do. He went on to be a successful entrepreneur and the CEO of Ness Health, N-E-S Health, an energy medicine company he co-founded with Peter Fraser, where they have created an energy field testing and treating device, which is the highest selling in Germany and the home of that type of technology. He became a published author, writing Decoding the Human Body Field, the New Science of Information as Medicine. He went on to make the award-winning film The Living Matrix Movie, which educated people about the body field, or how the body field can influence health. Then he went on to make the full-length documentary film Choice Point, where he interviewed luminaries like Sir Richard Branson, Bishop Bishop Desmond Tutu and Barbara Marx Hubbard, exploring approaches to solving some of the world's largest problems. And he has a new movie currently being made called Supercharged, which looks at how top performers have been able to transform themselves from lethargy to having abundant energy for life. You can go watch Harry's movie at thesuperchargedmovie.com. I highly recommend it. So he basically went from bedbound to conquering the world, and now is the CEO of a worldwide bioenergetic company. He has come a long, long way, and I'm so thrilled to have him today on the podcast. Harry, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Wendy. It was great to be on your podcast. I'm really looking forward to it.
So why don't you tell us your story in your own words and your struggle with chronic fatigue?
Sure. So, well, I was basically bedbound for around 10 years between the age of 21 and 31. And basically what happened, I was just finishing up university, and I ended up getting some sort of viral infection, along with actually some emotional trauma, and that also put me onto a bit of a cycle where I was a bit hedonistic and over partied. And after about a year of this sort of hedonistic and also getting some sort of viral infection, I was getting increasingly tired until really at the end of that year, I was basically so exhausted. It didn't matter, I could have a cup of coffee and it wouldn't have any effect on me at all. And by that point, I'd basically applied for a job in London. I'd been fired from a job because I had too many sick days. I think I had 20 days off in the first 2 months, and I thought to myself, well, it's fine. I'll stop taking any drugs. I'll stop having coffee. I used to smoke. I gave absolutely everything up. I'll go out to the Alps and cure myself with fresh air and exercise. And basically, I thought I'd just go rock climbing and mountaineering. And I did that for a couple of months, but I did it in the most exhausted state you can possibly imagine. And by the end of it, I remember this one period where I ended up I was so exhausted after climbing up a mountain. I got into a tent at the end, and I couldn't get out of the tent. I think I was in that tent for 7 days, and all I had was I had a big bottle of water and I had some dried bananas, and I just fed myself on dried bananas. And eventually I sort of summoned up the energy to try and get back to England, and drove all the way back from southern France through northern France and back to England. And I had to stop every half an hour to basically fall asleep at the side of the highway and then get back in the car and get back home. That really was the beginning of, I guess you would say, like full chronic fatigue. And I really didn't know what to do, so I tried all sorts of different things. Obviously, the first thing you do is go to the doctors, and they run all sorts of tests on you, and they really didn't know. This is the conventional NHS in England. They didn't really have a clue what was wrong with me. I mean, they noticed something was wrong with my immune system, but outside of that, they didn't know. I then tried, all sorts of various, I guess, more alternative and nutritional approaches, and I qualified as a nutritionist, sort of part time while I was ill, but that didn't really get me anywhere either. I did something a bit extreme. I went and did a 30-day water fast, and I really don't recommend anyone does this. But I went off to South Africa because I'd heard a number of people have been cured from chronic fatigue through fasting, and I was an extreme person, so I took it to an extreme level. And we went out there, and I lost about a third of my body weight. And but what was quite disgusting is I passed a bucket full of parasites, which was lovely. I think this was on week 2. Yuck.
I think
really
a lot of people are crawling with parasites. They just try not to think about it.
It's best not. It's best not to think about it. And they don't come up. It's interesting. They don't come up on any sort of tests. It was only through fasting, and only on about week 2 of eating no food and all these colonics that they actually came out. Anyway, so I'll fast forward a few years, but imagine I basically came back to England, and after that I basically came back to England in a wheelchair. At that time, I mean, the first time I tried to go abroad, I managed to drive myself back. This time I came back in a wheelchair,
Okay.
and then I was really fully bed bound, and I was on IVs, and yeah, my digestion wouldn't work or anything. So I'd really made I had to be honest, I'd made myself worse at that point. And yeah, no, I'll progress forward a few years, but I mean, if you can imagine, or anyone who's ill probably can imagine it now, but yeah, I mean, really, when you're lying in bed, you're just sort of staring at a ceiling. Life is pretty dreary because you don't really have much going on, and all your friends are off sort of blossoming in their early stages of careers and forgotten about you and that type of stuff. But after a few years, I came across this idea. I came across this idea of like vibrational medicine, energy medicine, and subtle energy, which I didn't really necessarily believe, but I was also pretty desperate and had tried out all of these other different routes, and I started to look into that a lot, and I came across, I was introduced to this scientist from Australia called Peter Fraser, who'd set up the first college in Australia for acupuncture back 45 years ago now. And I started corresponding with him, and he basically sent me over this paper on quantum biology. And I think I would have been 25 or 26 at that time, which didn't make any sense. But because I really had nothing to do and I had very little energy, I basically put some information up on a website, which I can't remember if that site's still there. It's probably still up there. It's called energetic-medicine.net. And then I forgot about it for probably a year or year and a half. And I just had this. I ended up having a bit of a crazy idea that because you have a lot when you have a lot of time to yourself, your imagination goes a bit crazy, which I think is one of the benefits of being ill and not having much other input is your creativity and imagination can go a bit wild. And I had basically ended up with this idea of creating a home wellness system, really for this fundamental reason, because I couldn't work out what was wrong with myself. I couldn't go and travel to any practitioners and doctors. So I thought, well, surely, and this is way before the mobile internet. This is before Google. This is sort of before any of this technology era. Like Yahoo was the dominant search engine, that had only just started at the time. But basically I had this idea that if there was a way that you could work out what was wrong with you from the comfort of your own home, and it would give you the information you needed to get you better again, A, I might be able to get myself better, and B, it would be helpful to other people. And I was stupid and naive enough to believe that I could give that a go from having no money and no energy and being sick in bed. And so I reached back to that scientist, which was Professor Fraser, and I spoke to him on the phone, and he said sort of, well, possibly, maybe that'll work, but his maybe was enough for him to agree to meet in person. So I flew from England and met him in LA, and he flew from Australia and met in LA, and he was a lot older than me, and I guess for him he really didn't need to do this, and so that was quite a big deal. And for me it was a very big deal because I really hadn't traveled anywhere since that South African adventure 4 years before, and so it was a massive thing for me, and I wasn't really in any state to do it, but I did it. So and then we ended up meeting in LA, and we just spent 10 days together before we sort of flew back. And he long story short, we hit it off, and we decided to try and make this system. And what he had done that was really really revolutionary is so after he set up this acupuncture college, he basically started researching and looking into the energy of the human body field in a much more detailed way. than I guess than the Chinese medicine system. And he sort of put another 25 years of research beyond when he left Melbourne University.
Well, wasn't he trying to scientifically prove the Chinese meridians? Wasn't that his original goal that he set out to accomplish?
I don't know that actually. Maybe it never came up in conversation. But I think his real goal. Well, basically what happened at Melbourne University is the other. I think you might be right. Actually, is the other professors didn't like what he was doing and didn't like his research, and they really wanted to change Chinese medicine into a sort of a standard sort of pain response mechanism. Like you put a needle in, so it must be a neuropeptide response. Like it must be some sort of chemical messenger. And so you're right. Obviously, yeah. I mean, he was doing research to show how it was more field based, and they didn't like that. So he basically had to leave the university and carry on his own path. But I mean, he was such a broad thinker. I mean, he was an expert in homeopathy and natural healing methods, obviously in Chinese medicine, and obviously he was a great researcher and scientist on top of that. So he was really trying to fuse physics with these sort of more traditional ancient ideas, which is where he started coming up with the original body field. And then basically when I met him, because he'd been working with this other physicist, he had everything in terms of physics. So he would describe everything as magnetic monopoles and things like that. And I was just like, Peter, we can't have a home wellness system and heal people with magnetic monopoles or analyze them like that. We need to look at the organ systems, like the strength of different parts of the body and and how energy flows. And so from that we came up with the concept that we have now, which is the energetic drivers, which look at the strength of the different fields in the body that are provided by the organs, and then also what we call energetic integrators, which is sort of a hybrid of Chinese medicine and some of our own stuff, but it's basically looking at how energy flows from one part of the body field to another. And I mean, the short version is over the next year and a half or so, he basically gave me all sorts of different types of infoceuticals that I got these amazing healing reactions. And it wasn't that I took something and was healed. It wasn't like that. It was more like he would give me this antidote to a group of viruses, and I would get like a 2 or 3 day quick little fever and reaction, and then that would go. Or we would make another remedy, like for example called emotional stress release. And in those days I was sort of in that condition that you call, like, I was extremely tired but extremely wired, like in a constant stress response. And that ESR, which stands for emotional stress release, like we took that, and I was still tired, but the wired part and the stress part started to come down. And of course, when that starts to go away, you do actually start to heal, and then you get less tired over months. But when you've had chronic fatigue for 10 or so years, it's not like I mean, it's not a quick thing. But and then as I say, we started making all these different types of infoceuticals, which are like these energetic drivers and energetic integrators that we're describing. And gradually over a year and a half, and over the years, these different layers of health would sort of unpeel, and we ended up, that's half of it. And then we also started working on this health analysis system, where you can put your hand on a device, and coming out very soon, maybe by the time you hear this podcast, is you can put your thumb on a little BioTouch connected into your phone, and it will tell you exactly, it'll tell you the strength of your energy and how your energy is flowing, and perhaps more importantly, it'll tell you which type of infoceutical that'll help you the most in that moment. And so
so let's talk a little bit. Let's take a step back and let's talk, just for anyone listening that doesn't know what how this system is approaching the body. So when your company is called Ness Health, and essentially the goal of the device, the little scanner device, is to look at your body's energy field. So let's talk a little bit about our energy field and what that means. Like, what is that, and how does that determine our ultimate physical health?
Sure. So, I mean, I think it's probably good at it to look at it from a conventional medical avenue. So, in medicine, you have an ECG and you have EKGs, and you have things like MRIs, and an ECG, for instance, an EKG is basically picking up the magnetic fields coming from your heart. Like an ECG, you can put over your brain and pick up your brain waves. And an MRI stands for magnetic resonance. And if you go in an MRI device, you can get this sort of full analysis. All of those, all those conventional medical things are actually picking up fields and electrical activity from the body. The bit that medicine doesn't necessarily correlate to is it hasn't gone a step further and says, well, when you're looking at all these fields and the energy in the body, does that actually have some particular function in the body? And obviously the Chinese knew this 5,000 years ago, and with the work that Peter did, he basically ended up mapping that out much further. And this, ultimately your body field actually acts as, if you like, as a control system, basically above the biochemical or the conventional biochemistry level, or perhaps a simpler way of saying it is, biochemistry is sort of like one side of a coin, but there's also this electrical or energetic component to the body that has. I'd argue it has more of an influence over your biochemistry, but I'm happy to split the difference and say, we're half biochemistry and half electrical.
Yes, and so you have this energy field in your body, and from what I understand, based on quantum physics, that our heart and other parts of our body actually imprint information and operating instructions and send that to our cells and organs. And that's one of the primary ways that our body communicates with different parts and sends messages. And can you talk a little about that and things that
Absolutely.
interfere in that energy
So
field?
you've gone a level deeper to the information aspect, which is great. So yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the body field, obviously it's energy, but on top of that energy, you also have this concept, or you also have information, and ultimately it's information that is triggering different healing responses and is controlling the body. And as an example, like if we looked at the nervous system is pretty fascinating. Like if you look at your spinal cord, it's so thick. If you look at nerves coming out of it, they might be as thick as your little finger, and then they change diameter and they get thinner and thinner, and then they're also not continuous. They also have little joints in the way of them. Not joints, I can't remember the word now. But basically it's a discontinuous nervous system which has different traveling speeds right across it. And you might say, well, why on earth does that matter? But if something is traveling at like 5 meters a second in a thicker part, but it's only traveling at half a meter a second in a smaller part, when you start to think of concepts of how you can coordinate movement, but perhaps more importantly, how you can communicate to all these trillions of cells in your body pretty much instantaneously. Like the nervous system doesn't give a particularly good model of how you can do that. However, what it is able to do is it can set up a field, and as long as you have this field that is everywhere, information can basically transmit instantaneously across a field. So if you like, it's not that information is traveling down the nervous system, it's just the nervous system sets up the field so information can jump instantaneously in the field outside the nervous system. So yeah, I mean that's an example. And the example you gave was the heart. I mean, the heart emanates out, well, at least 15 meters out from us, and it has a very, very strong magnetic field with a particular impulse that it's continually imprinting, and it's also directly connected with a whole bunch of nerves to the brain, and it is basically also able to transmit information right across all your cells, because when you're looking at cells, we're very used to this idea that a cell has little receptors that must be receiving chemical messengers, but it also has receptors which works through structure war, which is probably a more complicated discussion. But if you just imagine that a cell has chemical receptors, which are a little bit slow because it takes a long time for a chemical to get from A to B inside the body. It has to go down, or it has to be produced somewhere in your brain or a gland and flow all the way down to that cell and then react. But the bit that's more instantaneous is it also has energy, or if you like, energy and information receptors that can act instantaneously. And if it didn't, we really wouldn't work properly. I mean, another way of looking at it is, like, if I suddenly make you angry, Wendy, which is very hard.
Very difficult to do.
It's very difficult. Well, I'll make you laugh instead. So if I make you laugh, like your whole body sort of in instantly responds to that. It doesn't respond 26 seconds later, for some little bit of serotonin to reach this, make your smile happen and all that sort of stuff. Like, but it's more easier to think, when you're angry, like your whole body tensed up and the whole thing happens like super fast, and that's more of an information energy carrier rather than the chemical thing. But yeah, you feel, we feel those emotions way before your cortisol rises and all the chemical cascade from that. But obviously that does happen too. Like, if you like the chemicals, it's more of a longer term thing, but the instant side is energy and information.
Yeah, and that's why there's a lot of phenomenon in medicine that are inexplicable with just the chemical messenger theory, that it's hormones or neurotransmitters or enzymes that are conducting the whole symphony that is the body and its processes. And so it's far more complicated than that. And Ness has a very brilliant, simple, elegant explanation for what's happening physically in the body. And when you ensure that information flow in the body is happening properly, then health is just the natural result. So let's talk about some of those things that interfere in the body's energetic communication pathways in the body. So what things that hamper or damage our body's energy field, and what implications that has for our health.
That's a really interesting question, because everything is interconnected, or if you like, it's sort of, well, if you like, it's a bit of a complicated word, but it's interconnected and it's holographic. So I guess the easiest one to say would be, as it's Wendy, let's say heavy metals. But heavy metals naturally. Lead is a great field blocker. So if you have a lot of lead in your body, it's totally going to distort the body field. All sorts of other toxins do too. But what's perhaps more curious than that is, you can have all of this trauma and emotional shocks that might have happened early in your life that also distort those information patterns. And this is what I mean by holographic. Is, curiously enough, like if you have a lot of those sort of emotional trauma or distortions, that can actually attract more. It creates a pattern that will actually attract more heavy metals and toxicity into you, and it happens exactly in the other way around. If you happen to have got exposed to a lot of toxins, you end up in this sort of emotionally traumatic state as well. So there's this, you can't really say one necessarily causes or affects the other. Like, all these things sort of happen simultaneously, and well, causation is very it's a very dicey business in health, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's very interconnected.
But I think that's very, very interesting that, in Nest, you kind of look at a lot of emotional traumas that people have, which you can see in the scan that you can do at home. And these emotional traumas have a profound effect on the body's ability to transfer information to the body and communicate, and then can have a profound effect, a negative impact on our health and causing cancers
Yeah.
and other
Well, I mean,
things
if
later in life. And this is shown in the research.
no,
This
exactly.
is not
Well,
nest.
if it's
This is
no, well,
shown.
exactly. Well, exactly. I mean, well, if it's distorting your operating system, but by default, you're not going to absorb things so well. Your liver won't detoxify so well. So yeah, you end up accumulating these things. Yeah, I can't remember the research exactly, but I know there's a webinar done by Nikki Gratrix on ACEs where she has detailed all of this incredible research that just that basically links all this emotional trauma in early, well, I think they're called adverse childhood events, where it's linked to all your early childhood trauma, to all these disease states later in life. But before you worry too much about that, in case you've had a lot of trauma, it can be reversed. Like you can get rid of trauma, and the key to all this is shining a light on it. So perhaps like if you're having a scan with Wendy, or with her or one of her, I don't know what you call them, coaches, is that right?
Yeah, coaches.
Okay, with one of Wendy's coaches. Yeah, you can basically you can basically identify what that trauma is, and you may know it, but you might not want to say it. So it can help to visualize it, and then as you bring it into your consciousness, well, you can talk about it, which is really helpful. But B, you can also correct the informational pattern that's behind that. And it's amazing. I mean, it actually starts coming out in dreams. Like when you take things to release those patterns, you start dreaming, and dreams are basically how you do processing, and then it basically dissipates. And when you take something from an unconscious pattern to a conscious state, you clear it, and then you have these sort of miraculous changes on your health, which isn't really isn't really Nest doing it. It's basically your body. It's basically your body's own healing system. Because really, the body is basically a miraculous doctor, and this whole wonderful cascade of positive changes starts occurring.
Yeah, I can testify that because I've been doing Nest at this point for 7 months, about 7 months now.
I've done it 14 years now.
I know,
You've
I
got a few
know.
years to
Like that's
catch
why you're
up.
so calm and zen.
I'm so
There's
calm.
no negative emotions flowing anywhere. No, but
I'm a robot.
yeah, yeah. But I was trying to think. I'd been struggling with the last year prior to learning about Nest. How am I going to detox my ex-husband? and and I have found that as I've progressed on Nest, that I've become lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter emotionally, and I handle stress so much better. My stress has actually increased, but I'm still really calm and just handling it with grace and ease. And
Yeah, I think that's always the best sign, because obviously, I mean, what happened to me as we were getting better, it turned into an accidental business, because we created this system, and then obviously people wanted it, and here we are today. And when you build and scale a business, that's not necessarily unstressful at times, but yeah, but here we go. Was I was going to say, yeah, did you take lots of brain holograms, or what did you take to
you know what?
detox your husband?
Oh gosh, you know what? I've only taken two brain holograms, and the brain holograms help to release emotional trauma.
I
And
take a lot of Liberator too. Have you taken a load of that?
no, I took a lot of chill. So chill has
All right, okay. So
liberator in it.
next phase, take raw Liberator.
Liberator. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, raw Liberator with brain holograms.
Okay, okay, great. Yeah. And see, these are
And tell me
emphasis.
your dreams.
Yeah, exactly. When I first started as I had a lot of very, very vivid dreams, which a lot of people that start Nest report. That's you're just processing and filtering and sorting, and that's how your brain kind of releases stuff. And it's sad a lot. And I found prior to that, a lot of people they just kind of stopped dreaming. when they're not sleeping well, they're not healthy, they're not functioning well, whatever is impacting them, they kind of stop dreaming, or they don't remember the dreams, more accurately. They don't
Yeah, well,
remember them.
it takes energy to dream, and if you don't have enough, it's sort of, yeah, it packs up.
Yeah, so that's kind of one sign maybe your body's not functioning so well. And so let's talk about, so you do this scan, you can do it at home or with a practitioner in person, and it gives you a lot of information. You kind of learn about the energetic blocks that you have on your meridians, but just a tremendous amount of information. There's a wealth of information, which we won't get into so much. And so, to correct these issues that we discover on the scan, you take what are called infoceuticals. So, we've been talking about that a little bit. So, why don't we just tell people who've never heard of any of this what exactly
Yeah, we didn't even
are.
say what one is, did
Yeah,
we?
what are they? So, what are
Trying to think, I've got one
infoceuticals? Oh,
around.
I've got one
No, I
right
don't.
here. I've got one
Oh,
right
there we
here.
go. That's
Handy.
an
So, this is
infoceutical.
chill. So, I'm actually going to take
Which
some.
Wendy needs a lot of.
I do. Actually, forget the thing. I'm just going to drink some.
Yeah.
And so that's what I usually do anyway. I just kind of down them. Most people put a few drops in water. But I tend to like drink at least one or
Yeah, we
two,
have a
one a
few
week.
hardcore people who just drink the whole the whole thing.
Drink the whole bottle. I really love the chill pharmaceutical. It does just that. It chills you out because it calms down your nervous system. And some people need a lot. Like myself, I need a lot. Other people that are more sensitive, not so much. Maybe 9 drops is helpful for them. Everyone's a little different. So, what are infoceuticals exactly?
Well, basically, it's in the name. So it's called an infoceutical because it's an information ceutical, and it's really, I mean, it's really an advance on the idea of homeopathy. And if we go back to 200 years ago, homeopathy semi works, or it half works, but its methodology is you take something like, if you ate a lot of arnica, it would make you vomit. No, sorry, nux vomica would make you vomit. We'll say nux vomica. If you took a lot of nux vomica, it would make you vomit. And the idea in homeopathy is if you could dilute that down, so it didn't have the toxic chemical, but it still had the information message, or if you like, the memory, and then drank that, your body would basically react against that sort of vomiting message and end up healing the stomach and basically stop you vomiting. And what we thought this back 14 years ago is, well, that's sort of a bit arse about face. Like, why couldn't we give a message to the body that was exactly the polar opposite of that, and it was all in the positive, and just say to the body, look, this is how a perfectly functioning liver is. Like, this is the information of a perfectly functioning liver, or a cell, or a bit of heart tissue or brain tissue, or an emotional state, and just give that to the body. And so basically, what Peter was able to do is basically code that. So we had. They were made in all sorts of different ways, but probably the easiest example would be, we took different healthy tissue sets, and then we would basically record the information of those, or we would digitize it, and then we would then imprint that information just into a mineralized liquid. And that idea can sound a little bit strange, but there's basically all this research that shows how there's sort of there's 4 types of water. You've got ice, vapor, liquid, and then you also have this 4th phase, which is actually just called EZ water, or 4-phase water, which has more structure in it. So anyway, in short, when you have structured water, you're basically able to record information on it, very similarly to how you can record music onto a bit of magnetic tape, and then we end up with these 76 different types or sets of information imprinted into the EZ or structured water, and that ends up as an infoceutical.
Yes, that it's so interesting, and it's a concept I think it's difficult for people to wrap their mind around. But there is a Nobel Prize winning Dr. Louis Montagnier, who has done research on this, and doing research on information being like from DNA being in water, and the from that water, because it was similar to.
Well, he's basically able to transmit the information of DNA electromagnetically to another, basically to a beaker with water, and they added a whole load of the base pair material, and then within that beaker, it then recreated to 98% accuracy basically the same gene that was in the initial flask, which is, well, it's actually incredible. Well, to put it in perspective, we basically had sort of four sets of scientists. You've got homeopathy originally, which was Hahnemann, who sort of came up with the idea a bit. Then we had this other Frenchman, another scientist called Benavista in the 70s, who basically was proving that homeopathy could do something, and he basically took the but in a sense this positive form of homeopathy that we're talking about. But he basically took a mast cell and got the mast cell to react to an information allergen, i.e. he just recorded the information of an allergen, and then the mast cell would react in the same way as whether, if the allergen was there or just this memory of the allergen was there, it would react in the same way. There was a huge hoo-ha over that, but it was published in Nature, I think, on the second time after a year of huge amounts of arguments, and there was a whole load of politics, and he committed suicide or was killed, who knows, but there's just a massive science hoo-ha with that, because the idea that homeopathy could work or was just not wanted in Western medicine at all. So nobody really wanted to touch water research or memory of water in any way, because let alone your political career science career being ruined, people died as well. So and then along came Professor Montagnier. He got a Nobel Prize for his work with for discovering the AIDS virus, and then he basically sort of took the Benavista idea further, and as I explained earlier, he's basically been able to record the information of DNA, transmit it to another beaker, electromagnetically imprint it, and then recreate DNA, which there should be another Nobel Prize for that again. I mean, you can read all up about it online.
The water was like creating enzymes just as if it was DNA.
Yeah, they actually add the enzymes in the base pairs, but it was able to then structure to the shape of the original thing, because if you just add all the original base pairs, it's just a whole load of base pairs, and obviously it's trillions in a string of trillions long, and and it was 98 point something, the same as the original, which actually is mind blowing. I mean, it's mind blowing to me, even though we're in this field. And then basically, when we met Peter's sort of taken that further clinically, and what we said, well, that's all really interesting, but can we use this to change epigenetic expression? Because how does self-healing happen? Ultimately your DNA and RNA basically split apart, and it starts taking proteins out of its library, and it goes off and basically makes its repair proteins and repairs various parts of the body. If you have something wrong with an organ, you need to repair it, and you need to create all those repair proteins to do so. And so what we said is, well, how can we get DNA to basically create the right epigenetic expression so it goes off and makes the correct repair proteins? And cut a long story short, that's what Peter was able to do. So we sort of took these three previous scientists' work and jumped it on along another step further, and then we've got 14 years worth of clinical evidence and results from that. And if you're into reading the papers, we've got 14 different studies on our Nest Health site. There's a tab that says research. I think it says research.
Science says science.
Science says
Yes.
science.
Yeah, I was on it.
Website
I was on it the other day.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So but you explained that much better than I would have. So thank you for that. Yeah. And so, and I just, the more I learn about Ness, the more I am just absolutely dumbfounded at how Peter Fraser developed this. I mean, he spent at least 30 years uh, just not intending to develop Nest specifically, but just in his own intellectual curiosity. There's so much research from so many different,
Yeah, we
scientists that have gone into Nest. It's unbelievable.
we have like boxes and boxes and boxes. I mean, it would fill up a huge living room of papers.
Yes. Yeah. So the infaceuticals, when you take those, they elicit a change in your body. And so, for instance, you said you can take something for your liver. We'll use that as an example. So you take liver driver, which helps to improve the energy levels in your liver. And so you said that was taken from that information that was put into that infaceutical is from a perfectly normal, healthy, functioning liver. And then so kind of explain the rest of what happens in that process and how that elicits a change in the body for the positive.
Sure. Well, I mean, I mean, it is as straightforward as you basically take 9 or 15 drops, you put them in a glass of water, and then you literally just drink that glass of water. And then the water is obviously absorbed. I mean, it's absorbed in your mouth and your gut, and that information that's in that structured water ends up, traveling around your body, and is basically that information is picked up. You said liver driver, didn't you? Yeah. So in this case, it's picked up by all the cells in your liver, and they go, okay, right. Well, it's basically providing a signal, or was basically providing an information message to all those cells. Say, okay, well, this is how we're meant to act and to be. And so, if like when you have a diseased, like if you have a diseased organ, basically you sort of all those cells are repeating ad infinitum a wrong message. And even though people say your liver is completely regrown every 6 months. I mean, if all I can say is, like, if you're ill and have had a liver problem for 5 years, you're like, well, my liver's still the same as 6 months ago, because it's basically on this loop where it's epigenetically expressing the rot. It's not repairing itself. It's just, well, it does recreate a whole new set of liver cells, but it recreates them in this bad pattern, in this bad expression. So instead, it basically changes that message and says, please be like this. This is the blueprint of what you should create. So when all the new cells are created, it ends up creating you a nice, fresh new liver.
Yes. I definitely have been on liver driver a couple times. Enjoying my fresh new liver,
Enjoy your
and
fresh.
trying not to abuse it too much. And so when people say, liver driver comes up in their scan, because the scan basically will tell you your top priorities that your body needs to have addressed right now, that's present on that scan. And so you typically take about 4 infaceuticals to begin, max 6 infaceuticals at any given time, and you do about 1 scan a month. And so when your liver driver comes up, then that's when you take that liver driver infaceutical. And why do you have to take that? Because somehow there's some interference with EMFs, electromagnetic fields, or emotional trauma, or stress, or poor nutrition, or toxic metals have prevented that information, operating instructions, getting to your liver to have it functioning properly. So by taking the infaceutical, you can kind of bypass that until the body is functioning better on the Nest program. But in the meantime, you can get your liver functioning better, and the results are just speak for themselves. The results are really phenomenal. I know with myself, with you, and all the stories that I personally heard when I was at the Nest training and the Nest conference, and all the 4,500 practitioners around the world, the results really speak for themselves. And so let's talk a little bit about, so you developed, over time, I've heard you say when we've talked that you've developed 2,000 infaceuticals. over the years, and now it's been whittled down to about 60. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, but and basically, it's just part of the research process. So, I mean, there's just for every well, I guess for every bottle, there's 20 that we threw away. I mean, sometimes we make an infosuit. Well, actually, most of the time we make an infosuitable and it would have a great effect. But sometimes they might have some other slightly curious, like some slightly curious effect, or would get too much of a detox reaction. This is especially true in the early days because the 12 energetic integrators, they basically correct each energetic compartment. And I probably won't go into it too broadly, but basically in their raw form, they were so powerful that we would get such strong reactions. We were like, oh yeah, we need to sort of like modify them and make them a bit more palatable for people. And so I think there's at least 3 or 4 sets of energetic integrators that preceded the current sort of really nice, lovely version. And I mean, the same is true for all sorts of the other remedies. I mean, I don't know, I've got all sorts of stories, but you want stories?
I need some extra strength, I think, because I'm like
Right.
drinking the bottles. But I'm having fantastic results, and I know that you guys had to create infosuitals that were, I guess, what you could say more consumer friendly, that doesn't freak people out, because these infosuitals, they start eliciting a change in your body very, very quickly, very quickly. And like, I took lung driver and I started coughing. Within a few hours you start expelling stuff from your lungs that's not supposed to be there. And so you've had to make them more consumer friendly. But some people that are really, really sensitive or really, really sick, just 3 drops can
Yeah,
really,
well, the
yeah.
more sick and sensitive you are, well, basically, generally, the more sick you are, the more you're going to react because, yeah, well, you've got to, you're here, and the blueprint is here, so it's going to want to take you to there. So yeah, you react more, but you can slow it. Well, as you say, you can basically slow it down. We're taking less drops, and then there's always ESR, which basically calms everything down. So if you're going too strong, you can just back off with that. Personally, I'm more of a you know I mean, it's a philosophical thing, but personally, I think it's better just to go for it and get through all these detox reactions and get to the other side and get well. And I have heard a lot of people say, oh well, I don't want to take it because I have to be at work tomorrow. I have to do this. Like, doesn't matter. Like, just do it. Yeah. Say if you cough a bit at work, so what? It's yeah. I mean, if you want to be well, yeah, I think it's better to make the commitment, and there'll be a few uncomfortable things, but it's not so bad. You can't go about your daily life. So
Yeah, I'm definitely all for the bulldozer philosophy. Like, just
yeah, yeah,
bring it on.
just
Because
bring it.
when you walk through that fire, you're gonna
Although,
get.
although not with your heavy metals, you're like, don't go too strong.
Yeah, but even I know with you, like, you're detoxing and stuff. But but for even then, still, I will kind of bulldoze through stuff because I want these
Yeah, I
metals
did
out of my
another little
body.
fast recently.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, but just to make it clear to the listeners, you're not going to do nests and start dying and have all these detox reactions, all this stuff. It's everyone's different in how they
Well,
react.
the result. I mean, yeah. I mean, the result is actually you feel a lot better. So that's the benefit. And there's only a few, things like liver and kidney. If you have a very clogged up liver, like that can be a bit strong. But there's all sorts of other ones, like all these emotional ones, brain ones, heart ones, that actually just make you feel really good. And that is another approach. You can just go for the I want to feel good, and that also has a cascading benefit. And so yeah, if you're really sensitive or feeling overly emotional, just start there, and don't worry about detoxing the organs, and do that a little bit. Do that a month or two down the line.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good approach to get people kind of, I guess, broken in, so to speak. But it's one of those things where the basic goal of Ness is doing this type of bioenergetic program is increasing the energy in the body. And that's what everybody wants. So many people out there are desperate. They're,
Yeah.
taking stimulants, they're taking prescription Ritalin just to get out of bed, or they're like phentermine, or they're even doing crystal meth or cocaine, or that people are desperate to get energy and go to great lengths to do it. And everyone out there has known people that are doing this, or drinking coffee all day long, whatever that looks like for other people, and their body's
Yeah, well,
energy.
it's
Yeah.
pretty simple health. I mean, well, I say it's pretty simple, but I mean, if you can increase your energy and reduce your stress, and your information processing works properly, well, you end up activating your own healing system, and you get better. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yes, yeah. So the goal of Nest is to build up the body's energy levels, and this solves so many problems in the body.
Build up energy, but also increase your ability to process information. Because yeah, I mean, if you're wiser and less stressed, that's 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 all pretty good too.
Yes, yes, we love that. And so you actually made a film about increasing energy in the body and many, many different ways to do that called Supercharged. Can you tell us a little bit about that film and why you decided to make that film?
I did. So that's on the back of another two films. But well, we made this other film called Living Matrix, which was basically about what we're just talking about as the body field. But then anyway, we wanted to make another film that was really just focused on this concept of energy, and how energy really works in the body, and goes beyond the ideas of diet and biochemistry. Because I mean, it's pretty fascinating. But we're really used to the sort of this idea in the cell. Well, we're very used to the idea that we completely live off sugars, or of course, if you're into the ketosis ideas, fats, but sugars or fats. In actual fact, Gilbert Ling, who is a cellular biologist, he said basically only 40% of the energy comes from that glucose and fat and oxygen mechanism. And I'll just take it a little bit further. 90% of even that mechanism actually comes from oxygen. And then we're left with this other 60%. What's this other 60%? Well, it's basically magnetism and light. And all of this basically works through water. And if we shut off the sun, I mean, imagine taking the sun away from the planet. I mean, obviously plants would die, but we would all die too. And the same with this idea of grounding. We don't really think of it. There's huge amounts of electrons both in the earth, but you also get energy out of Earth's magnetism. And so we basically wanted to make this film just to explain about how really we're going beyond biochemistry, and what these other sources of energy are. Because, and this is obviously especially useful if you're really low in energy. And sometimes this can happen to me, or certainly has in my real dire chronic fatigue phases. If your glucose metabolism isn't working very well, you've got your adrenals, and if your adrenals are low, you don't have enough, you might not have enough blood glucose, or sometimes it can all be too high, and you might be pre-diabetic, and the insulin isn't getting glucose into the cell. If that whole carbohydrate glucose mechanism isn't working properly, well, actually, there are these other ways you can get energy, just by going outside, like swimming in seawater, getting all Earth's electrons. Or you can cheat a little bit, and you can go in saunas, or you can really cheat and go in like ozone tents, where you're just flooded with negative electrons, and you just get a massive high. And that huge rise in energy you get from that, it's just pure electrons. Like, you're basically living on pure electrons. And just another weird fact, I mean, even in that carbohydrate glucose mechanism, ultimately in your whole ATP chain, ultimately, if you it's basically an electron transfer chain, and going, ultimately we're basically, but all our energy ultimately comes from electrons, and whether it's sequestered through food, I say through food, and where plant food or glucose even comes from is basically, the sun shines on a plant, photosynthesis, the plant then converts that into glucose. So even your nice piece of fruit ultimately is sunlight energy, and it's basically a condensed source of electrons, but you don't have to eat it in sugar format. And we make these things just to sort of give a broader point of view of how realities work, because we can get a bit fixated on diet, which is important, but it's not the only part of the story.
Yeah, and that's what I love about everything that I have learned from you, have learned from Nest Health, have learned from all the 3 films that you have made that are impacting so many people and educating them and shining light on these different ideas that are so cutting edge, and giving us knowledge in a way to vastly improve our lives. That's what everybody wants. They want more energy, and they just don't know how to do it. So they're just grabbing for whatever to try to.
Yeah, well, I think, and the thing with all this stuff is I mean, it's free. It's free to go outside. It's free to walk in the sand, or if you're not near a beach, you can walk barefoot. And I think especially when you're in a really compromised state, it can take time to reverse type 2 diabetes, or adrenal fatigue and all that stuff. And in the meantime, while you're, where are you going to get your energy from in the meantime? Well, you can actually look at these free sources of energy that aren't going to make you fat or whatever, but it'll give you more energy to be able to heal yourself. And then as you do, well, whether it's Nest or other types of healing programs, just that extra source of energy gives you the energy you need to, because as we said earlier, ultimately your body is really the best doctor. And if you can just rise up the energy enough to basically give your own to self-activate your own healing system, the body ends up doing the rest, and it ends up expelling toxins and all this stuff, especially if you follow what Wendy says.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, and I was going to say that a lot of people that are just reaching for carbs or sugar or Coke or whatever.
I'm quite looking for Wendy's demo of coffee enemas.
Coffee enemas give you energy also. And so I was saying that people are just reaching for whatever they know to give them energy, and there's so many other ways to accomplish what you want to get more energy. So Harry, thank you so much for coming on the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about where we can find you and watch your films?
Sure. So the Supercharged movie is on superchargedmovie.com, and that movie is, all our movies are free, so you just do the normal opt-in and watch it for free. And I promise we don't bombard you with lots of stuff, because I don't know, we're probably too busy to bombard you with lots of stuff. So don't worry, you just get to watch the film. And also with the Living Matrix, that's the livingmatrixmovie.com. And Nest is nesthealth.com, but you don't need to go to that site. You're probably better off going straight to Wendy's which I guess you're live210.com.
Yes. Yeah, and thank you, Harry. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I so appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And everyone, if you want to learn more about me, go to live210.com. You can also check out my healing and detox program at mineralpower.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Live to 110 podcast.